Good morning and welcome you all to PGM International Symposium's PGS 2021 last day, I think, but beginning of the new year already. So in this very morning, we have the chance to invite you all, and you can see that the formats of meetings is changing a little bit. Instead of kind of webinar of one side people talking to the anonymous listeners, today we decided to have it as a kind of Zoom meeting. And we are here, like myself and our wonderful guest, Professor Bernard Lanskey from Queensland today. He's going to be here together with us as a listener and provocateurs asking questions to help you guys to kind of like walk us through the future you would like to see. And you possibly already see like in the ad, so we say like traditions in transition or transitions in traditions. So those are the things that we would like to leave you on today for discuss in the session, which is called ReNEWed. And this has been proposed by a wonderful friends and the colleagues now, Dr. Khoo Ling from Yosoto Conservatory of Music. And here she's going to be here together with us now. And Ling has been working very, very hard with a group which is called 30 Under 30, hosted by SEADOM. So we're going to know more about who they are and what kind of things they're going to do. And please allow me to welcome Dr. Khoo Ling now. So Ling, if you can sort of like, I'm going to spotlight you now.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi there. Thank you, Anothai, for the introduction. So, it's been a real pleasure over the past few months, in fact, actually over the past year, to be developing the SEADOM 30 Under 30 project, which was a brainchild of Professor Bernard Lanskey, together with Anothai, driving it towards fruition. Just a little bit of introduction on what the SEADOM 30 Under 30 project is. The SEADOM 30 Under 30 project is housed, under SEADOM, and it gives visibility to young musicians in Southeast Asia under the age of 30. Now, these young musicians are all inspired by the International Music Council's 5 music rights. They make a difference. They chart new paths in the Southeast Asian music scene, in artistic innovation, community involvement, as well as in education. So if you'd like to find out more about the SEADOM 30 Under 30 project, do check out our website, which I believe Anothai will post on the chat. Do check out our Facebook page as well, which we will also post on the chat, and also check out our official video launch at our recent SEADOM seminar via a presentation, which we will also post on the chat. Yes, so today's entire SEADOM 30 Under 30 presentation is called ReNEWed, and it was in reaction to the topic traditions in transition. And well, why not twist it around to become transitions in tradition, as what Anothai had mentioned. And so there's this idea of renewal. It's not just about innovating, it's also about preserving traditions, but not in any formalized way, and that's why there's constant renewal. So there are three main questions that will be explored throughout the next 3 hours. The first is how can past values and traditions be re-evaluated and rediscovered? Second question, how can we bypass or overcome prejudices between the old as well as the new? And the third question, how are these juxtapositions opportunities in the Southeast Asian musical context? So for the first hour, we'll be talking about artistic projects. Second hour, we'll be talking about community involvement projects. And for the third hour, we'll be talking about education. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite Stephanie, Sulwin, as well as Kevin and Callista to present in the first hour on their artistic projects.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first session of presented to you by the 30 Under 30 Southeast Asian music leaders. So for the first hour of the program, we will be featuring 4 projects or performances which our members are involved in. Solwin Lok, Callista Liao, Kevin Kiao, and myself. And we are offering you performances that incorporate or integrate traditional and folk music to new ways of music making or music production. So today we seek to answer questions about how we can preserve our cultural heritage and bridge this preservation with innovation, and perhaps find ways on how we can innovate in this modern world through music creation. So today we'll begin with a recorded performance from the past, pre-COVID times, wherein some members of Southeast Asian music leaders were also featured. So without further ado, here's Kevin Kau's arrangement of a Burmese folk song. Wonderful piece, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing that piece.
Thank you. So is it my turn to talk now?
Yes.
I was just texting Rachel like, hey, my brain is blank right now. But anyways, thank you all so much for for this wonderful opportunity for me to share the music of Myanmar. So basically, I will just talk very briefly about the process and what this piece is about, who wrote it, etc., etc. So this piece was written by, well, first, it's called Mandang Yeko, which basically means in the shade of Mandalay Hill. So for those of you who have not been to Myanmar, there's this city in Myanmar called Mandalay that's like right in the center of Myanmar. And that's where, all the best traditions and culture are preserved. And that's where you will see the Golden Palace. So like the city itself has a significant meaning in terms of like Myanmar tradition and culture. So this piece was written by a Burmese composer named Myuma Nying, and he wrote lots and lots of compositions during his lifetime, and a lot of them actually became like really iconic songs and compositions in Myanmar. So this song, if you go to Myanmar, if you just know like the fragment of the melody and we sing it, everyone would know it, because it's a song that people listen to and dance to in Myanmar's New Year, and we call it Dinjan Festival, which is so that's basically like the background of this piece. And I arranged this for a standard piano trio plus flute plus 3 Myanmar instruments. They are the circle drum, the flute, and the harp. So this was done as part of a festival that happened in Myanmar back in 2017, and it was called a Philharmonic Society of Myanmar festival. And a lot of performers are actually part of SEADOM. There's Rachel Ho, she played so beautifully. And also there was Gabriel and Chalo. His name is Chalo, he plays Chalo. And he was also an NUS grad. So it was a really wonderful mix of people. And then we had like really prominent Myanmar musicians. And well, to talk about like the process and how I got started, or like, how I planned this, actually it happened out of nowhere. Basically, Gabriel reached out to me and was like, Kevin, do you have any piece ready? Because we need a piece like to collaborate on. And well, thankfully at that time I made an arrangement of this piece for piano 4 hands. So I was like, okay, we're like 3 days away from the concert. And I didn't know what to do, but then I just basically rolled the dice and didn't sleep that whole night, and I tried to make an arrangement. And I started to realize while I was making the arrangement that I didn't know anything about Burmese instruments, but then Burmese instruments in general, they don't really play, the way Western musicians play. Like the tradition is different, styles are different, notations are different, everything was different. So I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do. And basically I just wrote the parts for the Western instruments, and I basically just disregarded the Myanmar instrument. And then basically when we had these rehearsals, I thought about, the fact that Myanmar musicians are basically improvisers. And it wouldn't be natural for me, especially, for somebody who is not a Burmese music specialist, to write anything fixed for them. So I was like, well, they know this music, they've probably played it 2,000 times. So I thought about some of the things that I want to bring out of the Myanmar instrument and also from the Western instruments. So I knew that they were amazing improvisers, and just based on like how Myanmar instruments work in general and where they're used. In Myanmar, if you go to Myanmar, you'll hear a lot of these music in like festivals and all these like folk events, let's say, and it's always like very percussion oriented, very percussive, can be very virtuosic, and at times it's also like very speech-like. But then like on the contrary, with Western instruments, they can do those things, but also something like very lyrical. So I thought, I'm going to just let them play like by, taking turns. So as you like heard in the recording, in the first part, I let the Western instruments to start, and then I went to the Burmese instruments and kind of like, tried to keep them separate, just so that people can hear like a very distinct difference whenever they hear like the two different groups. And then there's this middle section that I felt, the melody was written really, really beautifully. And I thought, it would be more appropriate to have it played by the Western instruments, like the flute and the strings. So I tried to just, wow. I think I said something very funny. Somebody's laughing really hard. So basically, that was like my creative process. I wouldn't really say that was like creative. It was kind of like I just did it on the spot. Just tried to do the best out of what was given to me, and yeah. I don't know, Stephanie. I don't know where this is going, but maybe. You can,
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Kevin. It's a wonderful arrangement. And actually, it's so great to hear folk songs that are arranged for chamber ensembles without a singer. Because when we take away the text, we actually give the local audience the opportunity to appreciate its melody by itself. And by simply hearing these familiar folk melodies, we rekindle in people their sense of belonging. And here we realize that these folk songs and these melodies are actually a part of us and part of our community and part of our nation, right? So yeah, thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. So yeah, I think we'll go on to the next piece, which is also an arrangement of a song for an ensemble. So this next piece is a Filipino song entitled Nasaan ang aking puso, or translated in English as Where is my heart? I'll copy the translation on the chat so you could follow. There. And now I'll share my screen.
Ako'y may isang pusong pinakamamahal. Dugo niyang dumadaloy ang nagbibigay buhay. Ngunit sa isang sandali, ako'y walang malay, ang puso'y di makita, tibok ay naparam. Ako'y may isang pusong pinakamamahal. Dugo ng dumadaloy ang nabibigay buhay. Ngunit sa isang sandaling ako'y walang malay, ang puso'y di makita, tibok ay naparam. Ay, anong mawawa, anong
So hi there. So the piece that you just heard is a kundiman by the Filipino composer Nithibhon, which was arranged for the group piano ensemble by its artistic director, Alexander John Villanueva. So the ensemble, which I am grateful to be a part of, is a contemporary music performing group in the Philippines, and we aim to promote contemporary music in the country. So the particular video that you've seen is from the ensemble's mini concert series entitled Pagtanaw, or To View in English, which was a joint project together with the Goethe Institute Philippines and the Manila Composers Lab. So in this concert series, the ensemble basically re-examines the Filipino identity through the kundiman, which is a song form or genre about unrequited love, but also contains undertones of nationalism and devotion towards another, whether it's a person, God, or country. So yeah, this theme of unrequited love is actually a symbol of the chains of oppression that our people experienced under colonial rule. But eventually, Filipinos assimilated to Western culture as the colonizers had no plans of preserving the customs and traditions of the Filipino people. Sorry to say, but it is through this circumstance that Filipinos were able to write songs about themselves, about their values and traditions. And thereby it creates a song form that is truly theirs and truly Filipino. But even though the kundiman's musical form is a blend of melodic material from native folk songs of the Tagalog ethno-linguistic group, and it's basically combined with European music traditions, given the cross-fertilization of Spanish and Filipino cultures in the 19th century, still, the kundiman as a genre ultimately reflects Filipino traditional values. And so through the concert series that the ensemble launched, we featured new arrangements of these kundimans by changing the instrumentation and incorporating the aesthetics of contemporary music, but not compromising its core. So yeah, the idea of arranging 19th century and early 20th century Filipino music actually came from our encounter with German composer Johannes Schellhorn and his notion of transcomposition, wherein his material is derived from early music compositions, such as those of Bach and others, and transform it and show its full potential through a new musical arrangement. And so it's like hitting two birds with one stone, like you're creating something new, yet at the same time preserving it. Well, not exactly preserving it the way it was a century ago, but by bringing it to the surface, we're actually helping it to evolve and survive. Because it is in these songs that our culture and values as a people and as a community are embedded, and I believe should continue to live and should serve as a reminder for us to be rooted to our heritage. So though it is definitely a struggle to keep these songs alive in the consciousness of the new generation because of the influx of all kinds of music, we certainly have to be innovative and more creative in this aspect. We have to find ways to entice the TikToker generation to just sit still and prolong their attention spans without letting them have an urge to scroll on their phones, while letting them experience the full beauty of our art, of our work. But anyhow, we were very grateful to have a creative team who thought of ways to present these kundiman performances online by using an old television, blurred visuals, somehow depicting the struggle of our cultures to survive in a modern world. So yeah, I have to admit that it's really hard to be an artist these days. Not being able to perform live and not having a person-to-person connection for a year and a half might impede us to create new works. But I'd say that it's always a worthy endeavor to just keep on going and continue to innovate, not just for the sake of the art, but for humanity's sake. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, and I appreciate this opportunity for us to share our projects.
Wow, Steph, that was really beautiful. I think many of us got goosebumps listening to that piece.
Thank you so much.
So maybe now it's for me to talk a little bit about my work. So it's something a bit different. It's still in line with the whole transitions in traditions, but my work is titled Rojak City. And for those who don't know what rojak is, it's actually a dish from, it's said to be of Javanese origin, and you find it very common in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. And rojak is kind of like a salad where you have like sliced fruits, vegetables, and you put a spicy sauce with it. And then of course there's the Indian rojak variant as well, where you get a whole plethora of many yummy goods and then you dip them in sauce. So rojak is taken to mean something that is very, in our colloquial language, we use rojak to mean something very messy. So in writing Rojak City, for me, Rojak City is dedicated to the youth of Singapore, and it's a very quirky kind of work. And why dedicated to the youth of Singapore? Because this was actually a commissioned work by the Singapore National Youth Chinese Orchestra. So they came to me and they said they would like to commission a work, and there was no theme. It was fully up to me to explore. The only thing was that they wanted to be cross-cultural. And so you would hear the Indian tabla with the Chinese drums, the Malay gambus or oud, also very common in the Middle East, along with the Chinese pipa, and you will hear, of course, the violin and the erhu, and you will hear the Chinese suona, and finally, of course, bagpipes. So I don't want to give much away before you listen to it, so I think let's just dive into this music video performed by the Singapore National Youth Chinese Orchestra, presenting Rojak City. All right. So we're not going to give away the ending. If you want to see the ending, it gets really wacky and really crazy. Check out the link in the chat over there. Thank you, Kalista. Thank you. So, Rojak City. So as I said, Rojak is this whole messy salad dish of everything thrown together and mixed together. And it's really a piece dedicated to the youth of Singapore. I'm really paralleling the energy of the youth because the youth are the people who actually disrupt the norm and forge ahead. So when I was approaching writing this piece, to me, it was quite a big commission, and I was constantly thinking about it. I was at a stage where I was constantly thinking about who am I as an artist, and what even is my style? Like, can I find my own style? So what I first did was to research into every instrument. So I talked to all of them. For the Chinese instruments, I knew them quite well because I'm from a Chinese orchestra. But for things like the tabla, the gambus, those are things that are a little bit, I don't get as much experience working with them. And especially bagpipes. This is my first time writing for bagpipes. So it was very important for me to go and understand the style, their cultural context, and what's idiomatic for the instruments and all that kind of things before I start putting everything together. So when you listen to the music over here, I would say that it's really hard to pinpoint any one particular genre in this. Like, you can't really say, is this Chinese music, or is this Indian music, is this Middle Eastern? What I would say are my influences in this. A lot of the influences I had when writing this was from pop music, metal music, anime, game soundtracks, all these different, and of course all the different cultural elements of all the ethnic groups in Singapore. I would say the music captures the zeitgeist of the youth, but actually what I'm really doing in this piece eventually was I found myself, while writing this piece, I'm challenging the notion of identity, the idea of traditions. So I threw in a lot of so-called cliche traditional elements. You would hear like Chinese Kung Fu style music, Chinese folk songs, motifs of like Scottish Highland music, like paralleling the bagpipes. And I was trying to ask people, what makes this piece Chinese or Malay or Indian? And in fact, what makes you or myself Chinese or Malay or Indian? What makes us Southeast Asian? So when I was writing this, like, a lot of these things came about, and I found that it was not just about a piece going for a cross-cultural thing, because back in Singapore, I think a lot of the art scene, because of the push of the National Arts Council, there's a whole emphasis on like, oh, having traditional arts, we have to fuse it with pop music or something like that, and trying to find something. They try to find like a cultural element. Oh, this is Singapore traditional music. This is culture. But I think at the end of it, you know, Singapore, we are Rojak City, and in fact, not just Singapore, Southeast Asia, we are a whole Rojak nation. It's such a colorful, such a diverse place, and I think identity, culture, traditions and art is all constantly evolving. And I think this piece is my answer. It's my question and answer to the times. So I think with that, I like to say, you just see this little MV over here, and the next project you're going to have a look at is also a really cool MV, and Kalista takes things one step even further. So what I have here is something cross-cultural, right? Hers is something cross-disciplinary. So I'll let her introduce the project.
Hi everyone. Okay, so today the project that I'll be showcasing is Mang Zhong, which translates to green in here. So this is actually a Who and Run EDM music video. So I think maybe we will let Steph play the video first before I share more about it. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. So that piece was Mang Chong. And what I wanted to do with this was something that was much bolder than all the previous music videos that I've ever tried doing before. So how I first started out was that I used to upload Mandopop covers on YouTube and mostly Instagram. But this time I thought to myself, because I have this personal vision now of wanting to reinvent and reimagine the erhu especially, because that's what I play. So I thought, what could be the boldest thing that I could possibly do, to go about this? So that's how I came up with this project. And I think this project is an embodiment of like an interdisciplinary collaboration of all the things that I find just really, really cool and relevant to a 21st century musician. So I have things like, I kept my traditional Chinese instruments, and I also have electronic dance music now, and fashion, because if you ask me what are my top two interests, I would say it's definitely music and fashion. So how I actually got about doing this was also very interesting, because there was one day I was just window shopping and I passed by this this shop, and I saw that there were really unique fashion pieces on the mannequins on the window display. So I walked in and I was just, window shopping, and I happened to meet the head fashion designer of this brand. And I told her about myself and all that. And that's how she actually jumped on it. And she told me that, hey, look, I actually did a whole runway on futuristic fashion. And, it's all about exploring what the new future is after the pandemic. And that was very much in line with what I was trying to go for. And so that's how I actually got those two really cool pieces, which I actually really, really like. Okay, so that was the creative part of it. So during the preparation process, we, myself and the other run musician, that's Jonathan from the Singapore Chinese Orchestra. So we actually co-arranged and worked on this with our producer. So, we were experimenting different techniques for the erhu and run that would go very well with this genre of music. And is preservation important in my performance? I would think that in this case, for me, my goal is not so much about preservation, but it's more of the innovation and being able to present this genre of music to a greater, younger audience. So, I think but it definitely does draw some mixed reactions from some people, like, then where is the traditional in this? But in this case, I think that is not the main focus for this project, because I just really wanted to try something really bold and see what are the boundaries that I can push Chinese music to. Yep, so this is Mang Chong, and I hope you like it.
Yeah, such beautiful work, Callista. I really admire how you combined all these details together. At first, it's unthinkable that traditional Chinese instruments will be combined with electronic dance music, but it worked out really well. And it's such a great way of encouraging the youth to take up the erhu and play traditional instruments, right? And by doing this project and combining this instrument with EDM, you made traditional music instruments accessible to the people who are actually no longer in touch with their heritage. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to the four of you. I think Kevin is still here. Yeah, so thank you for such beautiful presentations. I think it was really inspiring to hear such a wide variety of works and it's crossing boundaries, whether it's in terms of technology or whether in terms of culture. Now, at this point, I'd like to invite Professor Bernard Lanskey over and see if, he had any questions to ask you or any comments to make. Is Prof. Lanskey there?
He is.
Hello.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Really great to hear you all. And it'd be great to have a conversation actually about this concept, the concept of transitions in tradition. I mean, part of the journey that I'm hearing there is actually, you're touching into instruments, you're touching into cultures, you're beginning journeys, and yet you're giving respect to pasts. Now, it's a little bit sort of, and of course, this is also an early stage with you. I mean, one day there will be a tradition which there was 30 under 30. So, and I know you're in a really early phase of this, of coming to know each other and so on. I wonder in that process, looking, because I mean, these are now already looking back at things you've created. And so I guess one of the first questions would be about, where are you now? I mean, what's the next thing for each of you? What, you know, the Rojak concept from Solwyn, I think is a really interesting thing. There's a lot of Rojak in a lot of what you're doing there in bringing together cultures and so on. And there's, as we know, with the colonial dimensions and so on, there's lots of real clash there that's still needing to be resolved or reconciled. And we know that's a societal issue very present in many places. I like to see it actually as the whole sort of Asia Pacific has that common need for a reconciliation of the truths of past. So it's a little bit, I mean, and you're going to be on this journey, you know, all your life. So this is a starting point. It's great to see you all together. Responses to that of what's next, and you know, where are you in your present from this experience of each other and of sharing?
So Prof. Lanskey, I really like what you said, reconciliation, and because I don't think resolve is the word to be using in the context, because I don't think it's about trying to find a solution. You know, resolve implies that it's about finding a solution, but I think when we say reconciliation, it's something to be developed and for like artistic expressions to flow, people to connect with one another, to kind of reconcile rather than find a solution. Resolve also implies that it's a problem, but I think all of that, the whole Rojak situation that we have in this whole Asia Pacific region, I think it's not a problem. I think so, especially in writing Rojak City, I learned so much about the instrument, and it was about like the conductor even mentioned, like, could you just make it a bit Chinese, and so that people can tell that it's for the Singapore National Youth Chinese Orchestra. And I was like, okay, you want it? At that point, I really developed the notions of challenging these things. And I said, okay, you want Chinese? So I threw in some really cliche Chinese elements in the context. So you hear, just in the beginning, you hear that whole pipa playing Ambush from 10 Sides. Is a very classic Chinese piece. And then in the later part, you also hear the Suona playing a Chinese folk song as well, but in the whole context of all those funky rhythms. So I was just trying to like, here, I'll give it to you. And I think moving forward, I'm at least bolder now to challenge people and challenge organizations out there. So I would be well, I'm in New York, so I think it's really the hub of all these. It's a whole melting pot of all the arts. So I think what I'm going to learn here is going to give me more perspectives and empower me further to bring things back to the region and do more things there.
Actually, just before I open to the others, thanks, Solwyn, that's brilliant. But I just want to give you one thought that came up from someone here in Australia yesterday, which I think might help you all, and even in answering a response here. It was the concept of persona. It was the idea that when you're in a space with the audience, the would-be audience, it will have a huge impact on who you bring into the space. So if I'm Professor Lanskey, I'm probably a different person from where I might be in other spaces, as an example. And I can see this in all of you, and certainly knowing obviously Solwyn and Callista better than Steph and Kevin in this context. I've seen you in different contexts and so on. So maybe one way to think of this, taking it forward from Solwyn's point about persona, having to answer and respect, but also wanting to have part of this that is where you feel you are now, and how do you take that forward? As an example, I liked Kevin's concept that he was coming in with concepts of who he would be, but then he discovered that he's working with people with very different ways of working. And does that change your persona? And does it say ultimately get to a point where it might change your output? Any thoughts on that? So taking the same question forward, taking Solwyn forward, but actually this idea of when you go into the space to create for the circumstance, how's it coloring you and how are you coloring it? Steph?
I think one way of answering that question is, I think we should acknowledge first the people from whom these cultures come from. Because nowadays it's so easy to get folk materials and incorporate it in our music creation. But we always have to be careful that the music we're creating is still representative of the people from whom we got our materials. And if, for example, if it's from a minority group, we always have to acknowledge them, bring them to the fore, because first and foremost, it's their culture whom we are trying to protect. And by making sure that we protect their culture through the new music that we are creating, we're also protecting them. Because I believe that without them, these music cultures won't exist anyway. So I think that should be our drive in our music personas and in our music creation.
There's a very interesting thing there, though, actually. I mean, so in Australia, we begin many meetings with an acknowledgement of the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet, and and pay respects to elders, past and present. But there's also a perception in the reconciliation here that we take that forward with respect to find our own voice as we move forward. So we have to care for that culture, which is, in the case of the Aborigines here, the longest living continuous civilization on the planet. But there's also this thing of now we contribute to that as we go forward. And it's so it's a little bit how to keep both of those elements. That I'm very conscious, for example, in the presentation I did a couple of days ago, of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, whereas if we look back at something we love too longingly, we ironically risk preserving it in a sort of formaldehyde past. How do we reconcile that with the future, where our love for that actually energizes something that was true in that, which was also a desire to express its moment? So I meant to be here as a provocateur, so I'm throwing that in as a provocation, but it's something that I think is, I look at your capacities, and I look at the capacity of the contemporary world and how we are going to sort of respect those traditions and evolve. Yeah, thank you, Steph. I do hear you.
Thank you, Prof. Lanskey. And thank you for
also aware of being the one coming from some of those older traditions and sort of don't wanting to impose that on you. I really respect you have that respect, and that's also really important. We could go around in circles here.
But I think that's the beautiful thing, because I think innovation and preservation are kind of like, the Chinese concept of yin and yang. There is actually a fine balance there, and to a certain extent, one can't exist without the other. And it's, about how we are finding that balance, and that is how we find that balance is precisely what answers one of the three main questions of today's session. That is, how do we rediscover and reevaluate traditions? And from that, how is that actually an opportunity? Just as Solwyn said, it's not a resolution, it's reconciliation, and therefore it's actually an opportunity for mankind actually, and the music world to evolve and move on actually. So I think it's a wonderful discussion we're having here. And I'd like to nudge it on into the next session, which explores community. But just before we bring on the next session, for all those who have just joined recently or missed the introduction, I'd like to just mention that, the 30, this is, what you're seeing right now is the SEADOM 30 Under 30 project. All right, and it showcases a whole bunch of wonderful young musicians who are innovating, as you have just seen in the last hour. I wanted to mention that we are open to collaborators, whether it's in designing the program or whether it's in offering mentorships to our artists. So if you are interested in collaborating with the SEADOM 30 Under 30 program, if you're an educator interested in collaborating, or you are in the music industry and you think you can contribute to this program, do send us an email. We'll be pasting our email in the group chat. I also just wanted to shout out to all educators that we are open to nominations to join, for artists to join the 30 Under 30 program. So if you know of, exceptional students who are innovating and doing wonderful work, contributing to the Southeast Asian musical identity, do nominate them. Or if you are a student and you feel that you could be a vibrant part of this community as well, do nominate yourself. Okay, so we'll also be posting our link for nominations in our group chat. So I'd like to now invite Rachel, Kenny, Nikki, as well as Niranjan, who will be presenting on what it's like to create new audiences in the community. Are you guys there? I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Okay, good morning and good evening, everyone. We are the second hour. We are going to talk about creating new audiences, and I'm Nikki from Philippines, Rachel and Niranjan from Singapore, and Kenny from Malaysia. So before we begin, our program today is divided into 3 parts. So the first part is called Discovery. Here is we're going to tell you how we define creating new audiences in our way somehow, and as more of the definitions and introductions of the projects that revolved around the definition from creating new audiences. And then the second part is exploration. When time allows us, we hope that we could collaborate with you in breakout rooms when you hear the projects that we introduced to you and you found a project that you want to join in and participate in. We're going to divide our breakout rooms into interdisciplinary, empowerment, and technology. And then the last part is where we're going to come back in the main room and share with each other the creations that we were managed to create. So going there, and first part, discovery. Our definition actually revolved around this quotation that was given to us, and it's called potential audiences are real people found in real places. So our group, after as we admit, after evolving from different diagrams and graphs to be able to find the definition, we were able to make a final lock on this one. And this is our main definition. And as you see in the big circle here, is the art practitioners, which is us. And we want to define is that for us to be able to find real people found in real places, we need to look inside our communities. And as we look deeply in our communities, it's from these real people is where we can explore the undeniable current events that they are dealing with. For example, social trends, such as technology, which Niranjan is going to talk about, social issues, such as climate change, that I'm highly interested in to talk about, and then through our skills and that we shape through our own music professional development, which will be magnified by Kenny and Rachel. And with the help of our core guidance, the 5 music rights, it gives us new creative ways to reach out to these real people, to help them and be one of their relevant tool in developing a good community, a good society, which we as an art practitioners also ought to happen. And with that said, we are now going to share with you some of the projects that we personally created, collaborated with, and some of them are still ongoing projects for the communities that we were very interested to take part of. So, and by the way, before I let Niranjan take the floor away, I hope you keep in mind this word around here, you. It's going to be elaborated more in the second part of our program. And so I call Niranjan to really take the floor now.
Thank you so much, Nikki. So, all right. So, my name is Niranjan Pandyan, and I'm a multi-award-winning Indian classical flautist, a music producer, a music director of an Indo-Asian contemporary ensemble, Brahmastra, as well as a creative head. I'm also a jazz student at the LaSalle College of the Arts using the Indian bamboo flutes, venturing into cross-collaboration and interdisciplinary productions. Yeah, next slide. So, moving on. So, what am I actually going to talk about? So we might ponder in this pandemic situation, we are talking about new experiences, new audiences, and all this new realm that we are facing. So I'm going to scope my entire conversation or discussion into that are we creating new experiences alongside new audiences with the use of technology? This technology thing was a very foreign element for me. Basically, I was an Indian classical musician playing in temples, playing in concert halls, just playing for processions. That's how I started music. And then it slowly evolved when I realized this wonderful aspect of bringing music to a larger realm. So my first point, multidisciplinary approach to arts, music, and aesthetics. Of course, we are bringing all these into very different platter. So let's watch maybe just 1 minute of the excerpt, Tamil Language Festival.
தர்மத்தின் வாழ்வை சூதுக்கவும் இறுதியில் தர்மமே வெல்லும் அப்படிங்கறத நம்ம காலகாலமா கேட்டு காலத்திற்கு பிறகும் அவங்க
கல்லப்பா தடைக்கல்லும் உனக்கு ஒரு படிக்கல்லப்பா வாழ்க்கையில் 1000 தடைக்கல்லப்பா தடைக்கல்லும் உனக்கு ஒரு படிக்கல்லப்பா வெற்றி கொடி கட்டு மலைகளை முட்டும் வரை முட்டு லட்சியம் எட்டும் வரை எட்டு படையெடு படையப்பா வெற்றி கொடி கட்டு மலைகளை முட்டும் வரை முட்டு லட்சியம் எட்டும் வரை எட்டு படையெடு படையப்பா மொழிபட்டு.
Okay, so basically we saw cross collaboration at many extent. So we saw like how the clave came in, how the Latin elements came in, and this composition is by A. Rahman and Indian pop music, and we later on fused Indian traditional. So we are and as well as bringing this into a music video format. So that people can also appreciate cinematography, the elements of angles, and of course the arrangement as well. Of course, we have done poetry, and what you have heard in the introduction was actually Tirukural. Tirukural is an ancient form of Indian literature, one of the very most important aspect, and we have brought that and fused it with music, relating to the poem, relating to the literature. So we have done that in English as well. We have done with A1 2019, where we spoke about different regions in Singapore, as well as in A1 2021, where we brought Passaries place to the community. So as we are bridging our community, we are also creating new experiences as well as new audiences with the use of technology. So that brings to a second point, where how are we really creating new experiences? And how do we create new experiences while we create new audiences? That brings me to our current project, which hasn't been launched. So I'm actually giving a sneak preview of the upcoming Festival of Arts and Music, Brahmastra Festival Arts and Music, powered by MCCY and NYC. Yeah, go ahead with the link. So I will show the modeling process that went with it. Yeah, Nikki, the link. So this, as the website is being loaded. So basically, this website encapsulates Singapore's traditional and contemporary artists and musicians. So we have documented their acts and even filmed them. and we have brought it into a digital virtual festival where we actually have modeled the entire Somerset bout. So this is an initiative by NYC and MCCY, is also an initiative by Somerset Belt Task Force. So that project is ongoing. If you get to see the page later on, we'll be able to explore the page and in the modeling as well. So via that, we are actually reaching out to new audiences around the world, as well as people who are interested in this kind of integrated projects. So with that, I'm also going to slightly touch about telematics. So recently we had this telematics project where we had to do a live performance, improvisation performance across border with Tokyo as well as Zurich. So that opened up new audiences as well. And so these are ways that we are creating new experiences while there are new audiences beyond frontiers that we are tapping into as well. So you might ask, so what is the context? So what is all this about, and who are our target audience? Okay, the website is here. So if you look carefully, we have taken, this is around 5 months worth of work pending launching. So we have recorded the videos at the location, and this website will be launched on October 4th as well. So this is a sneak preview. So this was some of the artists that performed there. We actually modeled them as well. So you can, if you can look around the entire location, the entire Somerset is encapsulated. Yeah. So if you go into the artist section under genres, so you can see how these are some of the acts that we are featuring, from Indian traditional dance to Chinese ethnic music, instrumentalist. You can go into multicultural music as well. It's there. So you can go into diversity, and you can see open scope project there. We've encapsulated some of the projects there. So yeah. So this website will be launched proper on October 4th, and we will make an official announcement once the entire website with infographics is available. But if you have a query, you want to be part of the event, I would love to include your acts. Just feel free to drop a query and whatnot. So basically, so you have seen that project. So this project is one of the most interactive projects that we have done. Let's go back to the slide. So, so moving on. So what is my narrative and what is the context of this presentation then? What are our target audience? We usually do every project by looking into a community, by looking into what are the needs there. And we customize customized experiences so that our audience can relate. Ultimately, we want to touch people's life, and all these experiences, new experiences, usually it's experience for them and they relate with that. So Tade Uduwai is actually a award-winning composition that was done during the pandemic, when the voices that were least heard needed a louder voice. So Tade Uduwai is about that fighting spirit, and it has won a few awards in the Munich Music Video Awards. Maybe you can just play that track, just one or 2 minutes sample of that.
தவழும் குழந்தையே நடப்பதும் தளராத முயற்சிதான் உன் வாழ்க்கை உன் கையில் மட்டும் வா தோழா திண்ணத்தோடிருந்திடு தீங்கேதும் வந்தாலும் தாளாண்மை கொண்டிடு வெற்றியை நோக்கி முட்பாதை எதிர்ப்படும்
Thank you, Nithibhon. So when we look at this production, basically it's in Tamil. So we have a subtitles version which is not available on YouTube. Basically, it's talking about the fighting spirit and perseverance. This is something that when I talk to people around me and my community, especially my musicians and my musician friends, they were not doing so well during the pandemic period, and some of them didn't have a voice to share their stories, their struggles. This music was to resonate with the larger community. And the visuals and everything was done by a team around the world. So my mixing and mastering engineer was from Amsterdam, and our production flow actually changed. So that point pulls me to the next. Does it mean that if you're going to attract new audiences, we need to change our workflow? This is a very good question that I pondered, and I took 4 months to finally come to a point. There's not an absolute answer to that. As long as my aesthetics, my music, and my arts, my vision and mission is always the same, regardless of the change of the workflow, I bring music content to new audiences and create new work to relate with them. So my workflow, from just being an Indian traditional classical flautist, all I did was playing in temples, playing ragas, playing talas and improvisations. It has changed into playing in jazz settings, playing in blues, composing music, directing music across genres, across borders. So my workflow became from one single diagram to multiple levels, from audio to video team to AR, VR designers to supervise immediate production team, cinematographers, and bringing different experiences to people via the use of technology or the digital media, in fact. So that pulls to my next slide. So I'm just going to end. So ultimately, as much as we are developing professionally, we need to have the community in our mind. And as we two merge, we are looking into 5 music rights, or 5 ways to actually amalgamate these 2 concepts. The arts practitioners, music, musician, creative, the creative industry in entirety falls in the foreground and ensure that this ecosystem nourishes. Thank you so much again, and thank you so much for the time. I would like to pass on to the next speaker, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Niranjan, for sharing. So yes, I would now, good morning, everyone. So I'm Rachel from Singapore, and as a performer, educator, and curator, I like to actually combine these identities to use music to connect to others. So I started my journey as an undergrad student at YST in Singapore, and then furthering my studies in Royal Conservatory of The Hague in the Netherlands. And my education in these 2 schools really gave me the opportunity to explore new pathways on how to stay relevant as a 21st century musician. And they really greatly supported me in my endeavors in my interest areas, such as in modern and Baroque flute performance, music pedagogy, creative improvisation, and music and well-being in the community. And now coming back a full circle as a teaching assistant back at YST, I really hope to continue to instill these values to our students, as well as continue to explore new ways to connect with our community locally and abroad, especially in the Southeast Asia region. So in the next few minutes, I will be using examples from my own and my students' experiences, and to share with you how we can continue to actively engage our community and to create new audiences using music, and why it is an integral part of every musician's journey. So the first concept, buitenspelen, in Dutch language is actually a term that my professor René Jonker, and he presented at the symposium yesterday. So he shared this term with me. And buitenspelen actually means playing outside, and which is also known as the highest form of learning for children. Beyond their homes and their schools, children explore their own playground. They go out, they meet their own friends, they explore their surroundings, they discover the sounds around them. And likewise, actually, as musicians, being able to discover new spaces, transitioning from performing only in the usual concert hall setting or practicing in the practice rooms to actually bringing the concert hall into public spaces. And playing outside allows us to explore new spaces, to meet new people, other musicians or people in the community, to explore different community groups and discover the sounds that each group can create together, because each group, has a unique identity. And being out in the community actually closes the distance with our audience. Before, when we're in the concert hall, let's say we're on the stage, our audiences are sitting in the seats, there is still some kind of a distance and not as much personal interaction. So being able to be out there allows us to meet new people and even gives us an opportunity to learn who we actually are and how we relate to our environment and our community. With this, I would just like to show a few pictures. And so the picture on the top is actually our second year students from YST who was doing an outreach project with ReNEWed Hospital, an elderly home in Singapore. So of course, in COVID times, we had to do it through Zoom. And now the space, instead of a physical space, became a virtual space, but yet still connecting within the community and playing outside in that case. And the picture below was one of the first few times I had the opportunity to play outside, and it was in a hospital, an ward for the elderly. And it was very special because I was actually also playing with my grandma and also two other students from the conservatory. And the next concept is to actually craft a personal experience. And, it's very important to put our audience at the center of our performance, to understand their needs and to connect with them on a personal level. And with this, I'd like to also share a few photos. Yes, so as I mentioned previously, that the students were doing an online outreach session, and instead of just doing the usual performance and the audience claps, they actually did a little music making session with them where they gave the elderly the autonomy to choose a tune, and they actually created and mixed musical features around with the tunes. And these tunes were tunes that the elderly would know because it's during their time, songs from the 80s, from the 70s, and things that they knew and things they related to. And in the picture below, it's my experience at the Music and Dementia sessions in the Netherlands. So yesterday, Professor ReNEWed did share a little bit on what this Music and Dementia sessions were. And the special thing about these sessions was it took a very person-centered approach where we saw the person as the person with dementia and not the person with dementia. So this music making experience was very, very personal, where you can see Mr. V, he was actually holding a maracas, and I was playing a little tambourine drum, and I had my colleagues playing the bass next to me and flute at the back. So what we did was that, just Mr. V playing the maracas with just a few simple shakes, but yet we were making music with him and making this music his own kind of music, and how he experienced music on his own and his own creation. And after being able to craft a personal experience with your audience, we then start to bridge context and culture insight. So of course, setting our stage in the context and culture that can actually speak to our audiences. So for instance, Nikki, the pictures, please. Yes, thank you. So in the top, the students actually came out with a music trivia, and again, they chose songs that the elderly knew, but on top of that, they also added extra information to the song. So it was a little bit of, I would say, fun facts, so that the elderly could feel like, oh, I know the song and now I know even more of it. And same also at the bottom, playing music that is accessible is also very important when you're engaging a community, and it leaves a deeper impression and impact on the community itself. So with these three stages, I would also like to share another project. Thank you. So it's called A Golden Tale. So A Golden Tale is actually an intergenerational creative music making project which involves the different communities in Singapore, the elderly, young adults, and the children, all coming together to tell the life story of an elderly couple through music. So these interactions were very, very precious and valuable. Not only did it benefit the well-being of the elderly, allowing them to enjoy their time, but it also gave them a sense of purpose and autonomy, because they never would have imagined to be contributing to making music together with a group of musicians. So in this case, as musicians and even as the children who are used to practicing scales only in their bedrooms or going for exams or going to the music studio, they were now taken out of that context and put into this whole new process of creative music making. The 12 of us, 5 young adult musicians, 5 children who are musicians, and 2 elderly couples, they just met. And in 4 hours, we actually came up with a whole performance. And we came up with this performance based on the storytelling from the elderly couple. And then we chose different keys, different modes, different notes, to create different scenes in the story. And so this was really a very meaningful interaction, and in a way also very personal for the elderly couple themselves, because they are now going to hear their life story come to life through sounds and even take part in that process. And as musicians and the children themselves being outside, playing outside, they are actually understanding the experience of the elderly in those times. The children were very amazed that police wore shorts in the past, or the kind of games that the elderly couples played when they were younger. And of course, in the context and culture of relating to scenes that were familiar to the couple. And with this, I would like to actually show you a short clip of our performance of the work that we did. And it's based on the scene in Chinatown where the elderly couple actually met, and they actually ran a char kway teow stall, which is a very popular Singaporean dish, fried noodles. And we will depict the scene of Chinatown from the moment they start selling things on the street and all the way till the sun sets and they pack their stalls. So of course, this is just a very short snippet, and I would share the whole performance with you, the link. But it was really very heartening to see how the elderly couple was really, they looked so proud of themselves, and through this they're like, oh, I can actually make music. And I think this personal connection, or this experience that we all had through being outside, playing outside, and connecting with them on a personal level and relating it back to the context and culture really helps to form new ways of looking at music making. And on top of that, also creating new audiences in a community space. So thank you very much. And with that, I would like to pass the time to Kenny.
All right. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing this. I think, hello everyone, this is Kenny from Malaysia. I'm currently in Penang. I'm a trumpeter and just graduated from YST Conservatory of Music last year. And before the pandemic, I do conduct some wind bands in Malaysia. I'm also the founder and director of a music social enterprise called the Rondo Production. My advocacy is always to encourage youth influence music making and cultural activities. And especially during COVID times, we don't get to perform to real persons and also interact with live audience for almost more than a year now in Malaysia. The theaters are still closed, concert halls are still shut down. And over the times, this makes me rethink the connection of music with the youth. So now I'm going to share with you my thoughts and the processes I think it might be useful for us to think how we can create connections through the youth. And addressing and involving the younger generation is a way to create new audience of the future. And I think young people like us will be our future conductors, musicians, educators, filmmakers, and producers. Next slide. So first, we need to understand the value of music and culture to our very own community. Often it's very difficult for younger generation to be interested if they don't see the relevance or connection. We are coming from a typical Asian background where most of our parents, at least mine, will have a negative perceptions of the arts as boring or irrelevant to daily life or even expensive, right? So we need to play our role first to answer a few questions. First, what music means to you? What music means to your friends and your family? Then the next question is, how can we bring our music world to them? So instead of a one-way interaction, we need to go for a two-way interaction where we find out what are their ideas and concepts of music, and then we try to piece these puzzles together. Here's a photo from one of the projects of Toronto production where I curated an oboe duo recital at a cafe, and the music ranges from classical to contemporary and to arrangements of local folk tunes. And after the concerts, we curate a sessions of like chit chats with the artists just to find out like what are instruments, how are the instruments being played and what are music related. And then the next step would be, once we have identified the connections, then we need to identify what are the barriers of entry for the youth to understand about music. So I mentioned about expensive concept, right? Money is unsurprisingly an important factor for such engagement. In addition to the cost of entrance and then ticket or program itself, the hidden barrier might be the cost of expenses such as transportation and also instrument purchasing fees and things like that. And then time is another barrier facing for youth, young people like us. We have our own schedules, conflicting pressures from schools and work, and of course from our families as well. So what I've been doing with Toronto Production is always working with the government and private companies to offer scholarships and financial assistance to the underprivileged students. So in our recent festival, we have awarded over 40 scholarships for the refugees in Malaysia and the underprivileged community. Next slide. And then next step is to, once we have break down these barriers, now we have to look at how, what are the resources they need and how are we going to bring them together. We need to go down to the field to learn about their real needs. So not just assuming that they need this, but we need to talk to them and like interact with them to find out like what are their real needs. Do they need more teachers? Do they need better instruments or internet connections? Okay. I would say what most of us having right now, like especially for like those in these seminars, these are something that could seem like a privilege or luxury for some underprivileged children. So young people like us, we need to really understand what are the needs of the community you are trying to build before you convey your idea. So in Malaysia, we understand that there are a lot of band students out there, and there are a lot of band competitions too. So in a sense, you don't organize competitions, but instead we feel that the students should have the opportunity to take individual lessons. Hence, our festival concept is that everyone will get at least one individual lesson from the artist faculty, of course, alongside with other workshops and performances. And then the final step would be, once we have everything in our concept, we need to create a safe environment for the youth and to contribute their needs and opinions. Youth engagement doesn't happen overnight. These approaches need time to evolve. Everyone is going on the same journey, of course, but different paces. So I would say safe space refers to an environment whereby the youth can contribute and participate in economic, social, and political issues without any discrimination or bias. So as the young dynamics settle down, strengths of the music community will be identified. Different roles, like I mentioned, producers, composers, conductors will emerge, and leaders will eventually need to step forward, like us. So as time passes, we will get old, right? And then we are moving into a role where we are curating and recruiting and supporting another generation of audience. So to end my part, I would like to share a clip highlighting of our recent festival, Rondo Fest, which was supposed to be in person. However, the month before our announcement, we were instructed by the government to transform the festival digitally. But we managed to organize it successfully and impress the community with how we can curate immersive and comprehensive learning experience over the 4 days. And I think the most important thing is that we concluded the festival with a virtual concert which features 2 world premieres and a piece consisting our local folk tunes accompanied by animations by our local composers. So Nikki, can you just play the video?
I would say that this festival was able to attend every level of participants.
This is such a great platform for the student and for the artist faculty. So we are still together through music.
Everything is very smooth and is well thought out. The amazing drop. It's like very seamlessly.
To give a big compliment to the team of the Rondo production. They did a wonderful job. And I think the student in Malaysia is really lucky to have you.
Yeah, so you can actually see that the concept of the animations is based on the batik culture of in Malaysia. And the next steps for us to identify and connect with the youth through cultures is that we'll engage young composers to reimagine our Malaysia folk tales to see what they can come up with on their compositions, and also work with animators to create relevance through this interactive experience. Okay, that's for my part. Then I'll pass to Nikki.
Good morning again, everyone. I'm Nikki Juanita. I'm actually a Filipino, and today I just graduated from my music composition in Korean music at Seoul National University. So actually, after today's session, I'm going to run there to join the quick graduation ceremony and claim my diploma. And so part of being a music composition in Korean music student, I found myself doing a lot of performance related in theater, collaborations with, let's say some people told it more of like a radical kind of collaboration art, but so that's one of it. I'm also a musician in one of the Korean Gugak orchestra here in Seoul. And another side of me, of my identity, is I'm also a Secretary General of the Pinoy Artist in Korea. It's for the Filipino amateur artist in Korea. And the last one is I'm still continually collaborating with in the ASEAN Youth Network in Korea, and once a vice chairman. So once again, I am Nikki. I'm gonna make it quick. Okay, so I found myself being part of community that deals a lot with interdisciplinary performances and activities. Actually, interdisciplinary was mainly quoted by my colleagues because in the beginning I just thought it's collaborations. And so what I'm going to share with you are some of the important more of realization that I was able to take from being part of such activities. So as a definition, when music or our artistry intersect with different disciplines, we tend to bound to discover such elements like this one, discomfort and innovation. So to make it very quick, I think what came out for me in the notion of the discomfort that's being created by people on uncommon ground is that I think that about the kind of discomfort that's created by people being on uncommon ground, rather than common ground, is that in common ground often leads to excellence and expertise. However, uncommon grounds will very often lead to new thinking and fertile ideas and exciting collaborations. So these two, you can see part of the projects that we were able to create. So in this first project, what you can see is that we collaborated with different disciplines. So we have sports here. We have Hiker, who taught it's an installation, live installation art by one of our director during that time. And they asked our dancers to create a choreography while on the harness, climbing on the harness. And my music composition was revolved around the level of the harness on the rope. So it was interesting and very discomforting for me at the beginning because I wasn't really I was used in watching a piece when I'm performing, but this time not even as a performer, but asked me to compose a piece that was for this certain project. And then the next one is this project is actually about physical abuse for foreigner women that was married to some Korean men. So that was the interpretation of this art installation that was again collaborated by music students, sports students, and visual artists. And then this the second project here is where I mentioned about the discomfort is also, as you see in the performance, is also discomforting because this project was done in a winter when pandemic is in the beginning stage. So we were invited 12 artists from different disciplines were invited to create the collaborations that will interpret the emotions of the health workers. So prior to this project, part of the discomfort was in interviewing the health workers during this time of the pandemic. So as I entered this realization, one of the things that I took out got from this experience is that in innovations there are new ways of thinking and new approaches to old problems. So everything that I was able to realize and collect from all these experiences is that it made us create problems. So in the artists in South Korea have their own problems. So from all the prior projects that I was able to experience, I was invited to be the Secretary General for this organization. And at the same time, we're tasked to, let's say it was more of an experience to become an employable artist in this field because I was able to work different disciplines that made them ask me to create events to protect the artists in Filipino artists in South Korea. And one of the major takeaways I got from working in this interdisciplinary projects is that a quote from one of our directors where they mentioned that artists are the storytellers of empathy. And it's actually, he said that it's one of the empowerment to think as an artist, because when you put yourself as a relevant tool to magnify a problem of the community, then you are empowered as an artist, that you are important in a community, in the society, that you are the only artists who are able to create an emphatic environment for for the community. I'm rushing. I'm sorry. So, with this in mind, with all this realization and experiences I was able to collect, I would like to introduce to you. I'm indifferent with my colleagues. I'm going to introduce to you a project that's being proposed right in front of you right now. Is a borderless concert this coming 2021 at the end of October. One of the social issues that we want to create awareness for is about climate change. So basically the idea here is that South Korea is one of the leading countries that's trying to combat climate change. And they are looking for collaborators. And with that in mind, is for now, the idea is that as a collaborator, we're looking for pieces or musicians or songs that talks about nature. And through that invitation, they're going to invite also the Gugak composers, the Korean SEADOM composer, to create storytelling about that. And and to create climate change awareness for a cause. And that's how I'm going to do it quickly. And that's my presentation. And because of time, we are going to cut the breakout room, but instead,
Actually, Nikki,
yes.
I think it would be a wonderful idea to actually have the breakout rooms and to hear from all our participants here in the Zoom session today, their ideas. So I'm going to propose that actually we go ahead with that. But before we actually do, I would like to again, see if Bernard had any ideas for us before we further break into our breakout rooms.
Thanks, Wei Ling. Thank you all. That was incredibly interesting. And I think it's really wonderful you're going to have the space to break out, share, and explore some of the energies you're beginning to bring together here. There's so many provocations there. I love that last one with Nikki about the concept of the expertise comes from the common ground and the innovation may come from the uncommon ground. But I'm also very aware, coming to Australia now, of the concept of an artesian bore, an artesian basin, which is the water that goes under the ground that actually becomes the common ground under the uncommon ground. So one thing to sort of put into the provocations, having had so many different musics and so many different communities that you were just sharing amongst you all, where is that artesian bore of commonality that we can draw from wherever we are in our own particular way, to make, to grow fresh fruit, let's say. I mean, that's what would happen with this artesian bore. You would connect into it and you would find something that would never have been possible otherwise.
Thank you, Bernard.
Yeah, I think I leave it there because I think this idea of having a 15-minute period where you can discuss and explore with each of you leading would be, which is I assume what is happening, it would be very powerful. And that idea of improvising through those 15 minutes to see where it takes is, and just to know that you folks know each other is just so beautiful. And I think that's obviously the other element of music, is it's a community connection. It's not about the materials that you necessarily create. It's more about the companionship and the resonances. So, that might be a second field, is what is the musical experience that comes through this common uncommonness? And you get to that, and that gets to the core of how do we get people gathering? And, so wonderful that Southeast Asia, because of our traditions of colonialization and so on, and I'd put Australia in the same mix in this. We've got this mix of indigenous and evolved, and let's see what we can do with it together. Leave it to you. Thank you. Thanks, Wei Ling, for bringing this, and thank you, Anothai, for your work over the past few months. I'll leave you some space.
Thank you, Bernard, for the very powerful metaphor, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more observations as well as findings and insights from our bigger community, since we're talking about community here. So, Nikki, would you like to explain a bit about the breakout rooms? And meanwhile,
Okay.
I will open them all.
Okay, so to do a quick instruction of the breakout rooms, now that you heard that we talk about technology, social issues, youth empowerment, there are going to be 3 breakout rooms. And to those breakout rooms that you found yourself interested to collaborate and take part of in a certain community, please enter those breakout room under technology, community, and interdisciplinary.
Those of you who are still in the room, please feel free to pick the room or the theme you'd like to participate. Go down to the breakout sign and you can choose the room you would like to join in the discussion. So the first one is technology, the second one is community, and the third one is interdisciplinary. So please feel free to join any of the rooms as participants and can be as an observant as well.สำหรับผู้ที่กำลังไม่แน่ใจว่าทำอะไรต่อนะคะขอให้เลือกได้ว่าจะจอยใน breakout room ไหนนะคะเนื่องจากตอนนี้มีการ discuss อยู่ใน3ประเด็นคือเทคโนโลยีการทำงานร่วมกับชุมชนแล้วก็ในเรื่องของการทำงานบูรณาการข้ามศาสตร์ของดนตรีค่ะเลือกได้ค่ะเข้าไปฟังได้เชิญค่ะ For those who are uncertain what's happening, please choose the room. We are now having a discussions in the breakout room now for 3 themes. So please just go in, choose any rooms. We'll have around 5 more minutes for you to go and share some of your ideas and projects. So please choose the room and we can reconvene in the main room in 5 minutes time. Thank you.
find a resolution within 2 months as a composer, I have to say.
I agree.
Yeah, this is the only thing that a bit concerned to myself, just a bit concerned. But I think this is a topic that is worth to dive deeper and also find a way to actually maximize the impact in which I respect. Yeah, this is just my thought. Thank you.
So I agree, Juni. So what happened is actually I don't know if you're familiar with Korea or anyone who speaks Korean, we call this pali-pali culture. I don't know if you know pali-pali, but it's more of like, so Korean society walks fast, moves fast. So everything is just like want to make happen in fast. But like I said, for today, it's more of introduction and conversation for a possible connection and possibility to push through this one. Because one of the issues that I also would like to share when we had a conversation regarding this matter is that, how to say this? This is an argument that's not really institutionalized yet, but they want to push through an idea like this. So, but right now the idea is to create a concert that's going to be about empathy and climate change awareness and voice for the ASEAN music and element. So something like that.
Can I just chip in there? Do you mind?
Yes.
Is just be careful with when you're actually getting around to programming the music. There is a lot of music out there that is already about ecology and the environment and the impacts that we have on this. I suggest drill deeper, dig deeper, and go into the people themselves and the cultures there rather than environment. The power of influence that we have as humans on that environment, not just a reflection of the jungle and the sea and the sky.
Yes. Okay. Yes, Professor, I do agree with you. Thank you so much. And I guess our breakout session is ending now I don't know if you noticed, there was a time break and we're all being asked to go back to the main session now. So really thank you for everyone. It was nice meeting you. I'm going to contact each one of you once we solidify this project.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you. Thank you.
In progress.
So welcome back to the main sessions, Ling.
Hi, yes, welcome everybody back. And I hope that, the breakout sessions have offered much room for some reflection. Now, on to the water metaphor, I hope that through the breakout rooms, you have realized that, in working with different communities, we realize that the water droplet here in this part of the world may not that be different from the water droplet there in another part of the world. And at the end of the day, it's about how we as artists actually channel the water flows so that there are no stuck points of the water. Now, in going on to the next section, or the next session rather, just wanted to mention that, all water droplets have a life cycle. So it actually starts before it is water. And so, likewise in music, right now we are seeing trends in what it means to be a 21st century musician. But before we get there, we have to start with educating younger musicians. And so that is what this following session is about how we can teach musicians for tomorrow. Now, before we start the session proper, and for those of us who have just joined us, I just want to mention that, currently you're at the 30 Under 30 project session at PGVIS. The theme for today is ReNEWed, and I'd like to also invite you to check out our website as well as our Facebook page, which we'll be posting on the chat as well. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite Tanisa, who will be steering the next session.
Thank you, Ling. And hi, everyone. This is Tanisa from Thailand. And in this hour, we'll be talking about transformation. And today we have our 4 educators from Southeast Asia who will be sharing about their experiences as well as challenges teaching in Asia and looking back into our own education. What can we bring to the next generations of students? So I'm gonna share my screen. Thank you, Sylvan, for letting me know, but I'm not sure I can adjust so much. So I'm gonna talk louder if that's okay. But let me know if it's too quiet at some point and I'll try harder. So I'm going to share my screen now. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So, yep, this is a quote by John Dewey. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. Yes, and I think all of our panelists today have experience and can relate to this quote. And we changed the education that we've been given, and we're trying to relate it better to the next generations of students. So we're gonna, oops, why? Oh, sorry. Yes, that's right. So today we're gonna be framing our discussion in 4 R's: relevance, which is gonna be presented by Calista Liu from Singapore, and reach, which is going to be presented by Lawrence Galvez Percon from the Philippines. On relation, it will be me, Tanisa from Thailand. And then we end our first part of the discussion with Huiling's idea of realignment. So, and then the next part of our session, we'll be doing another breakout room for students and educators to share and to see if you can relate to some of the things that we touch upon today. So without further ado, I'm gonna just introduce Calista, who is the second year student at YST. And she's doing, as you've already seen, she's doing a lot of multidisciplinary projects, and she's still doing a lot more. So let's hear about her experience as a music educator too.
Okay, hi everyone, good afternoon. It's such an honor to be sharing my experiences here today at the PGBIM Symposium. And my name is Calista. And thank you, Tanisa, for the introduction. So I am currently a year 2 undergraduate at the Yonsei Conservatory of Music, and I'm currently part of the Music and Society program, majoring in Khoo and a second major in Southeast Asian Studies. So I know it's quite puzzling, but I'm here to share my experiences as an educator as well, while being a student, and my thoughts on music conservatory, professional education's relevance to my development as a student. So after graduating from junior college, I actually took a gap year before enrolling in the conservatory. And so this is the period where most of my peers and myself would look for internships or part-time jobs. So that was actually how I started my journey as a music educator. So I have taught beginners piano, erhu, and even Chinese language tuition during this period, as it was my main goal was to earn enough money to fund my own music lessons prior to auditioning for the conservatory. So this was my first encounter of teaching music as a student. So I met students from all walks of life, from parents wanting to expose their children to music at early ages, parents chasing after the paper qualifications of music grading examinations, and even adults who saw the erhu as a form of relaxation. So they just wanted to play like their favorite oldies for their family. So the goal of learning music was very diverse, and this made me realize the many positions a music educator has to learn to adapt with. So sometime this year, I was actually offered a teaching position as a strings instructor at the St. Andrews Junior College Chinese Orchestra. So this is a picture here of me with my students. So this was a huge increment in responsibility for me and quite a pivotal moment for me as a music educator. So as you can see here, they are cello students. The school had a very tight budget and assumed that an entire bowed string section could be taught by the same instructor. Though I did protest that my ability to teach erhu did not translate into me being able to teach another string instrument like the cello or double bass. So this was my first challenge. The tight budgets of schools did not allow these students to receive a proper music education in their respective instruments, and hours allocated to sectional teaching before a competition was very limited. So this is actually quite prevalent in many co-curricular activities in Singapore. So many of these students also reflected that they were only here because they had experience in playing this instrument from high school, and it was kind of like the easiest option to get by with accumulating CCA hours. So this question actually got me thinking about the future for our next generation of musicians. How were we supposed to cultivate a genuine interest for Chinese music amongst these youths? And however, being able to witness their progress and seeing them come together as an orchestra on the competition stage, it really moved me so much that day. And it also made me more confident as a music educator. So this contributed to my personal vision of reinventing and reimagining the erhu and Chinese music in this contemporary Singapore. Okay, and another challenge that I actually faced was that parents who sign their children up for Chinese music lessons, as they believe in the edge of having a Chinese music paper qualification. So while I believe that yes, this does give you a niche edge, but is this what the children want? And how does this differ from the blind academic paper chase that we try so hard to divert away from for this bigger idea of a holistic development? So I'll leave you to think about that. And I think as a 21st century musician, it is more important than ever to have so much more passion for your craft. So it's no longer just about playing your instrument well, but you have to be adept in more than one area to excel. And while this may sound overwhelming, let us move on first, and I'll be talking about a professional class offered in my conservatory. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so at YST, all the year 1 and 2 students are required to take a compulsory module in the profession of music and leading and guiding. So this is actually the class that Ling teaches me. Yeah, so through this class, we are taught skills like video production, website building, project pitching, and community engagement, amongst many other skills. So especially after the pandemic, these skills have become more necessary than ever. So imagine a world without concert halls, where everything has become completely digitalized. Musicians like myself would not have the necessary resources to stage independent productions or hire other skilled professionals to assist with our production. So the new starting platform for musicians like myself would be to do as much as you can yourself. However, not all musicians have found this need to be equipped with these skills yet. So I believe that everyone has to find their own meaning and association for the things they do in order to find their true purpose for it. So in this case, I actually observed that some of my peers in a conservatory, they do not find the same amount of meaning as I do in these classes, as they believe that the traditional route of becoming an orchestra musician or a concert soloist is still the only example of a successful music career. And the only important class for them is their performance major class, which I definitely beg to differ, as I feel like the 21st century has definitely opened up more careers than ever for musicians, and perspectives have to move forward with time. So being skilled in one instrument is no longer quite the cutting edge for majority of musicians. So therefore, the challenge here would be if we could convince educational institutions on the need for these classes to best prepare the next generation of musicians for the future. So what do we do then when the musicians themselves are still not convinced that they need this? So I believe that this is a question that we could possibly discuss later together in the breakout rooms, and I would end my presentation here. Thank you. Oh, Tanisa is muted.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Callista, for sharing your experience as an educator and as someone who also questions how the music careers can work in the future. I do have one question for you, and that question is, how do you find the balance between exposing the students to the traditional trainings and at the same time, giving them enough context about your passion, like your erhu expertise? So yeah, how do you decide what you teach your students?
Usually for me, I think it depends on the background of the student. So a lot of students, some of them, they're like, if say they're primary school or secondary school students, so they would most likely be preparing for local competitions or grading examinations. So I would try to give them like maybe a little bit more preparation for fundamental techniques and all that, but occasionally I would still divert and try to encourage them to try out more pop pieces and like find something that they like. It doesn't have to be pop, because I even have some students, they come to me and they're quite religious and they ask if it's possible to play hymns on the erhu so that they could play for their church service. And I was like, yeah, sure, just tell me what you like and then we can work something out together. So I think fundamentals are definitely still important to learning an instrument, but I would also plan it specifically for what the student is interested in and why they are learning the instrument. Did I answer the question?
Yep, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's powerful. And, meeting students where they are and, meeting their needs, because we're in the system to some extent, and we also have to provide what they need, but at the same time, finding their passion and trying to cultivate them as artists is also important. So thank you for all that you do for your students. And next, thank you, Callista. We have, why am I going backwards? Sorry. We have Lawrence from the Philippines, who is in his final year in the music education, and he's also a composer and a master of many different string instruments. So Lawrence, if you can introduce yourself a little bit and who you are as an educator.
Yes, hi, I'm Lawrence from the Philippines, and I study music education at Central Philippine Adventist College. I play rondalia instruments, and I have also volunteered and had my internship at Bacolod City National High School and Handumanan Elementary School.
Thank you. And so you have a lot of experience during this pandemic year on working in music education. Maybe you can share a little bit about that with us.
Yes, about the impact of COVID on music education, there has been a decline in music lesson enrollees because in the Philippines, music lessons are not viewed as something that would lead to a child's profession someday, but more like extracurricular. Also, the shift from face-to-face classes to remote learning have been a great challenge for education.
Yeah, so this diagram looks awesome. I think so.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about the online, digital powered, and also home base and how they interconnect?
Okay, so that's the algorithm for learning delivery modalities produced by Department of Education Philippines. So they currently have these modalities for online, TV, and radio broadcast and modular printed modules. So this algorithm asks the students what access they have to devices, TV and radio, or internet connection. So they can choose which modality would work well for them, but most students do not have access to any of these. So they have to study through printed modules, which gives challenges in evaluation. For example, the teacher cannot see the students' performance because of lack of access to devices. Also, there is a limited interaction between student and teacher, and collaboration between students have been affected.
I understand that the digital platforms developed a lot in the past year. Can I ask if the paper version of music education has changed in any way during this pandemic?
Well, it's only the first school year that the paper printed modules have been used. So it's still in it's in experimental form, I guess. So they're trying to do better in this coming school year.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And so what about homeschooling? I see a little homeschooling box. Can you talk a little more about that?
Well, for homeschooling, it's not really popular in the Philippines. Most of the students are enrolled in government-sponsored schools. So I guess some students have a hard time with the change in these modalities.
Right. And I can imagine that homeschooling during the pandemic, you probably can't go out so much to take music lessons. So music's probably even more limited, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And then, so there are definitely a lot of challenges, as you already mentioned, especially about access. How do we overcome these obstacles?
Yes. In my own ways, I have tried to help the situation here. So, for example, I've sent feedback and corrections to faulty learning materials and try to correct the materials provided by the Department of Education. Also, I try to help students, like if they send me questions about their modules, if through social media. So I've I've had some students contact me, and then I'll give them a clarification so they still have a better understanding. And then there are cases where music teachers accept alternative forms of compensation. Like, for example, I know a violin teacher that he gave violin lessons in exchange for bananas. So that's a really inspiring story. And also, let's try to see the situation through the student's perspective and help them maximize the use of the resources available to them.
Yeah. So it's definitely important to stay connected during this difficult time, right?
Yes.
Do you see any challenges for the educators and staying connected with the students, especially the older generation? Sometimes, you know, social media is not something we use to connect with our students. Is that some kind of challenge? Doesn't have to be in the music education, but, you know, for education in general.
Yes. Some of some teachers have difficulty trying to reach out to their students, and also the availability of access to devices and internet is not something that everyone has. So there is still that obstacle in education.
Right. So it's both from the students and the teachers end, right? That we have
Yes.
to find better ways to stay connected. Yeah. Right. So, Lawrence, do you have any more thoughts, feedback for how we can do better as music educators to overcome all these obstacles and staying connected together as a music community?
Yes. So since music is more of a collaborative and interconnected activity, then the music education should also be collaborative and interconnected. So we need to find a new way that is not dependent on internet and devices, but a connection between people.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, music is made by people, and it's important that we stay connected as a community. So hopefully this pandemic is over soon and we'll be able to collaborate real time in person.
Yes.
And that's definitely more fun, right? Thank you so much, Lawrence,
you.
for your presentation. Thank you. And so the next part is going to be me talking on relation. So a little bit about me. I am a pianist, and the past 2.5 years I worked in Hua Hin, which is a beach town south of Bangkok. And I was just learning a lot from my students and what the inputs that they give me in my class. I don't have to tell them what music is, right? They naturally listen to music already at home. So instead of telling them how music works, I kind of ask them for input, and then from there, I take it apart and then guide them through what they already know. So yeah, today I'll be talking a little bit about pushing boundaries in the classroom. Most of the music classes I did in Hua Hin. Now I'm living in Bangkok, so yeah, I'm using past tense here for now. Most of the new music classes I did were in the classroom, and so there are always these challenges, you know, trying to get everybody to learn something and to like make as much music as they can as individual instrumentalists, and that can be challenging navigating that in the classroom. So I'll just share a little bit about that. And I always ask questions what the right balance is, and you know, it's always about finding the right balance, and it's a question that never gets answered, because in every class you come across, you'll always find like, okay, should we focus more on the music making? Should we focus more on the music appreciation? Or, you know, should we let the kids experiment? Or should we ask the kids to learn the basics and understand it very well so that they can make their own music later? And should we be focusing on what they are already familiar with on TikTok, on Instagram, on Spotify, on Jukes, or should we expose them to greater genres of music, even if that's not something they're super interested in the beginning? And also, should we be asking them to express their individual artistry, or should we try to work together as a class? And that's always, you know, that sounds like a simple question, but it's so hard because a lot of music lessons take place in the private sphere for kids to develop very strong skills. But at the same time, when we're in a closed room, we don't get to communicate so much. So like, what's the right balance, and individual versus collaborative? That's the question I always ask myself in my classroom. So I'll just share a little bit about my students. This is Caroline. So she's in first grade, and she likes Billie Eilish, you know, and I feel like because she already likes Billie Eilish, I should make Billie Eilish work for her and not Ode to Joy to start with. Although, you know, later I want her to learn Ode to Joy and use all 5 fingers on both hands. But she has a passion for Billie Eilish. So when she goes home, she practices this. This is something she wants to sing to her family and to herself. So I let her take ownership of her music, even though I know that there could be other things that will give her better basics. So that's just a question of where the right balance is, what kids like or what I think is beneficial for them. And next, we have this baby shark. It might hurt your ears a little bit. So this was in the class, and I guess the kids would have been better off doing private lessons, but there are 30 of them and I could not be giving them private lessons. So, you know, some of them, they could do Baby Shark very precisely, and some of them, they were having more fun kind of drumming along. But at the end of the day, I feel like all of them learn and they try to keep to the rhythm, even if they're in second grade and they couldn't do it perfectly in the first few classes. So yeah, it's probably not so much of their individualistic expression at this point, but I feel like as a class, we all learn in different ways at the same pace. And well, another question I have is, it was so hard to get my kids to learn the recorder. Like a lot of them gave up so easily. But when it comes to electronic music, when it's so easy and you just click on the notes, the kids are so into it. So, you know, how do I keep their passion alive? What's the right balance between doing a recorder class and an electronic music class? That's also something that came up a lot in my classes, and I just switched them around every now and then. And last, this is their lunch break. The kids were playing a song together. was just a very beautiful moment that I saw. It was very random, but you know, when you feel like you can make music with your friends when you're in 3rd grade and you feel free to invite your friends over for a little music party at school, I think that's very awesome. And I didn't see that as a kid, but when I was young, I didn't get that opportunity. But I feel like if you can make music with your friends when you're in 3rd grade, when you're in high school, you'll probably be having a lot of fun with music. So I think, you know, the way I teach is not so conventional, and the kids can be learning a lot more from the basics, the music theory that I could have been offering. But I decided to keep the enjoyment alive and just let music be a communication tool rather than something they try to be an expert in. And although, you know, sometimes it's probably better for the kids later on to have good basics, but for me as a classroom teacher, I felt like the community part of the classroom was more important than the comparison or trying to master at the instrument. So I would like to hear your thoughts later when we have the discussions, but thank you so much. I'm gonna hand it over to the next speaker, who is the backbone of our under 30 project, Ling. And she's going to be talking about what mindsets in music education might need realignment. So on to Ling.
Hi, Denise. Thanks for handing it over and for a very wonderful insight there on what actually makes a good balance in music education. I ask myself that all the time too, and I think it's very closely related to this concept of realigning mindsets in music education. Well, maybe just a bit of context. I realize that, you know, I'm jumping right into the crux of the issue here. I do teach at YST, but I also teach piano on the outside, and I could talk about 21st century skills, as Calista mentioned, but you know, I realize it's much more powerful for a student to actually be saying that, and so I shall not say anything more on that. But I would like to actually talk a bit more about my experiences teaching piano privately, and some of the, you know, clashing currents of thought that I have experienced along the way. Now, some clashing currents of thought come up when I ask the question to parents as well as students. Well, why are you in music? The first question. And then the second one is, well, I'd like to get you to learn a bit more about, you know, local music, about music in Southeast Asia. And then the question, the pushback is always, well, why must I learn Southeast Asian music? Why must I learn local music? I want to learn Beethoven. I want to be performing Beethoven. And so, you know, there are those clashing currents of thought, which I will elaborate more on in the following slides. Next slide, please. Yeah. All right, so you'll see at the bottom of this slide some reflections from piano teachers in Malaysia and Singapore. This actually came up from a current research project that I'm doing, which investigates inhibition in music students in Malaysia and Singapore. So we interviewed a bunch of piano teachers, and you'll notice that a lot of them reflect that there's a huge paper chase for certificates in these two countries, which actually aligns very well. It supports what Calista had mentioned just now. You know, and I just wanted to ask here, Tanisa, you're from Thailand. Do you observe the same phenomenon in Thailand as well?
Yeah, definitely. Parents taking kids to, let's say, Yamaha, or, you know, all these like music lessons, just to have something for kids to do, to add to their paper or something.
Yeah, it's just for something for the kids to do, to add to their paper, and also to add to their life skills. You know, so many music schools are advertising themselves as, you know, if you learn music, you will be able to improve your concentration.
Definitely, yeah.
Your cognitive skills, you know, it teaches you teamwork. I'm sure music achieves all that. But, you know, the thing that really gets me is that there is so much focus on life skills, achievement and recognition, as well as actually these two circles here you see in the Venn diagram, life skills and achievement and recognition, that the other three circles, character building, things like basically seeing the beauty in music and therefore seeing the beauty in life, things about, understanding more about the human element. How can I empathize with different cultures, empathize with the music, and therefore empathize with my fellow human being? These three parts of the circle, of the Venn diagram, they are missing very much in the equation on why parents want to send their kids for music education. And I think this is a big loophole. I try often to change this mindset by showing parents the following video.
One board, like one
and
body
you'll
part
see in this
start, and then you slowly add, like you slowly include.
It's okay, go ahead. Yep.
The other like body parts as like the song moves on to the climax.
Yeah. How will you work that in here?
It could be like the swan kind of like, I don't know, like opening its wings.
Okay, you try. 1, 2, 3. Wow, very nice. I like it. So you'll notice here that that's actually one of my private students. She's not the student who's going to say, I want to take part in this competition. I want to win. Eventually, I want to be, that best student, the pianist in the conservatory next time. She is not that student. But, there is an inner musicality in her that, if so much focus was placed simply on achievement as well as life skills, that inner musicality in her would have been clamped down. So what I did in lessons with her is she loved dance. She loves contemporary dance. All right. So I got her to relate dance to music. And through this process, all right, she learned to fall in love with music through another art form, that is dance. Through this process, she accomplished all the 5 things in the Venn diagram. That's life skills, right? She learned, she achieved a lot from it. She learned how to play the piano better, actually. All right. She learned about character building, right? She learned how to be comfortable with the skills that she has. She learned how to appreciate music through another art form. She learned how to empathize with music because she had to understand the music in order to choreograph the moves to it. So I like to show parents this video, all right, to explain to them that, hey, we want to get to a sweet spot in our education where we are achieving the middle of the Venn diagram. We are accomplishing all 5 things instead of just 2. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I guess my question is, how can we realign, mindsets on why we want to learn music better to parents? Now, the other thing that is worth realigning, so if we can move 2 slides forward, is why Southeast Asian music? So I'll play 3 videos for you. The first 2 on the left are by Ananda Sukalan, and it comes from Ananda Sukalan is an Indonesian composer, and this comes from his collection called Alicia's Piano Book that he wrote for his young daughter. So maybe take a listen. It's called Falling in Love. So what you just heard is actually the ending of Falling in Love, which sounds like gamelan music, right? It uses the Palok scale. So that's Ananda Sukalan's Falling in Love. Let's now listen to a bit from Bartok's Island of Bali from Mikrokosmos. Okay, thank you. I think that works. All right, so you get the idea. I like to assign repertoire pairings, okay, to students where, you know, one piece of repertoire is by a local or Asian composer, and then another one by a composer from the traditional Western canon. But this, you know, this pairing offers a lot of interesting questions that I can pose to students, because you will notice that the piece that is written by Ananda Sukalan, all right, only has a bit of that Indonesian flavor of the Palok scale right at the end of the piece. Whereas the piece that is written by Bartók uses the Palok scale throughout almost the entire piece, right? So this is when, you know, sometimes I have to force students to learn both pieces, but then after they have done it, I will ask them, well, I did this with a 10-year-old girl, by the way, and I asked her, well, who's more Indonesian, right? Bartók or Ananda Sukalan? And then she actually told me, she said, Bartók is more Indonesian than Ananda Sukalan because Bartók uses more Palok scales. I didn't disagree with her, I just let it be. But then after that, I asked her, I said, well, you play the piano, right? And you know, you play a lot of wonderful, well, for her age, Bach, all right, Mozart, Clementi, Diabelli, but then Bartók is composing music in Indonesian scales, you know? So who's more Asian, you or Bartók? And then this is when she looked at me and she gave me a, you know, I like that look, because it's that look where, you know, you see in young kids, they start to think and wonder about the world around them. But she was very smart. She said, no, I'm more Asian because I have black hair and I eat chili. That's what she said. So I was like, okay, I let it be. But then, of course, you know, I continued the conversation with her, eventually, you know, trying to steer the conversation towards the fact that, you know, the kind of experiences that you put into the music make the music your own. So, you know, we got her to think about, you know, what kind of experiences she had in her childhood that could help her express the music better, which got me to the point that, you know, it's all about your imagination, and it's not about where the music, I mean, yes, where the music comes from, but it's about the fact that good music is good music, full stop, all right? Let's not have any prejudices against where the music is from, and that good music can transcend borders. So, you know, through this exercise, it was really, really wonderful because for a 10-year-old kid, it was possible to communicate, right? And to let her get her to start thinking about, you know, what her identity is, what her artistic identity is, and why it is important to know about Southeast Asian music. And from there, get her to be curious about the world around her. So at this point, you know, I just wanted to again ask two of our fellow panelists here, that's Callista and Lawrence. Callista growing up in the same country as I, Singapore, and Lawrence, of course, coming from a different country, Philippines. I'm just wondering, you know, in your experience, is it hard to get students, young students, to learn about their musical heritage in your countries?
I would think that it is a little bit hard because it's quite a big concept to grasp, like the whole understanding your heritage thing. And especially if they're of that age, I do not necessarily think that they even know about their heritage as, like, say, for example, Singaporean Chinese, much less music heritage. But, you know, I would definitely try to drop like pieces of info here and there, but I would think it's really quite challenging.
Lawrence, what about you? You teach Rondalla, right?
Yes. So for Rondalia students, they appreciate more Filipino folk songs more than Western pieces like Mozart or Vivaldi. So they prefer what's familiar to them than to what is foreign.
Is it hard to get younger students to be interested in Rondalla?
I think so, yes, because Rondalia it's not so common for young kids. They prefer to see more about guitar, piano, ukulele, but when they grow older, they learn about different ensembles from the Philippines, like Rondalia.
Right. Right, which is also in line with Kevin's experience earlier from our first session, who mentioned that, he had been composing music for a long time, but it was only recently when he was asked to compose something that had, a bit of Burmese culture inside, and he was at a loss. So I guess this question of, having this certain pride and consciousness about our own musical heritage, how can we as educators instill that in our students? And is it important to instill that in our students? My answer is yes. Yes. I guess the question to that is why. So maybe we can move on to the next slide. All right. So, in conclusion to this particular segment, the two questions I have about realigning attitudes towards music learning are: how can educators shift mindsets towards learning music away from achieving recognition and towards human growth and discovery? And the second question: how can teachers persuade the average audience that good music transcends boundaries? With that, I think I'll hand it back to Tanisa.
Thank you, Ling, for ending with some very difficult questions that I'm sure that a lot of us are still asking ourselves. So do you have a little bit of an answer to that, or some guidance?
Answer my own question, right? Practice what you preach. Well, I think it takes a lot of patient communication. And as Kenny mentioned just now, change does not happen overnight. Empowering the youth does not happen overnight. So I think it requires a lot of consistent, persistent communication, not just within our circles. So obviously, if I'm talking to you about this, it's very easy to find agreement, right? But I think, we need to bravely step out of our circles and to bravely communicate the needs for change with relevant communities in a gentle way, so that change can, start small and eventually grow bigger as time goes by. That's for the first question. Yeah.
I have a follow-up actually. Is it important to communicate with parents about all these values and in music education that don't seem obvious in the beginning?
Yes, and I think that drives me towards the second question. Yes, I think so. As much as I feel like we often educate, we focus our efforts on educating the younger ones. In private teaching, I think it's also very important to educate the parents as well. And this takes a lot of time and effort and a fair bit of EQ to convince, because sometimes, parents may have a certain way and idea of what they want their kids to learn. So it does take a bit of patience and skill to be able to communicate and change the mindsets there. I like to share videos in a group chat with parents. I love to share videos. I love to share articles, which also means a lot of messaging during the weekends to various group chats. Yeah.
That's wonderful, Ling. I think, it's a collective effort to make music community also involve parents, right? Because parents are part of the kids community. So I think it's important to create a better understanding so that we all can make better music and better music community. So thank you so much for your presentation, Ling. It's so good to hear about your teaching and your vision.
It's wonderful to hear everybody's insight so far too. Yeah.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I know that we are a little bit short of time already. We're going to break into breakout rooms maybe for 5 minutes. Is that enough time? And so we have 2 rooms, one for music educators and one for music students. You're not required to be in the group of like who you identify with. If you're an educator, you probably want to sneak in and hear what students are saying, but also we'll try to also keep the conversations to educator and student perspectives. So yeah, please join the breakout rooms, and we'll be back in about, let's say, 6 minutes.
For friends who's just came in, you can choose in the right-hand corner at the bottom, there should be some signs saying breakout room. So you can choose any room that you'd like to go in, either like the room that discuss the role of educators or the room that discuss the perspective of the students. So you can choose whichever room. That doesn't need to be coincide with your roles at the moment. So just choose to go in any of the rooms. We have around 5 minutes in there to discuss. So please go in and share your perspective. Thank you. Hello, I'm sorry that I have to pull you all back in.
No.
I think it's you're engaging. I think not enough time is better than too much time somehow. So we can continue this discussion later. Yeah, anything you'd like to add or suggest us? I think this might be a chance to again invite Professor Bernard Lanskey to reflect on what you have heard for the last 3 hours.
Thank you. Actually, could I just give Hui Ling, in fact, the opportunity to finish your last sentence? It's really about, because I think that would be a very good place for me to start. So
it was a simple thing. I'm just saying that, that having educators think about how we can package our teaching into play so that students experience the music through play, and only later then they realize that, oh yeah, it was that I was learning. I think that's a very powerful experience for students. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I thought that was where you're going, but it's just a good chance to sort of share that. So that idea that there's been so many toys thrown into the last 3 hours to be played with, and how do we trust and indeed play? I was very conscious just when I was listening to the last session and listening to so much of the material today, that actually there's a game that's being played at present in YST, which is that the first years have to submit a minute-long single note that they create music with. And they have to submit that before they arrive at the school and someone takes it forward. And for many of them, it's the first time they've played with a single note for a minute, and a sonority. And if you were thinking of all the different musical languages we've heard today, the different rhythms, the different scales and so on, that actually the fact that we're getting to a tertiary entry point and we haven't created, many people haven't had the chance to make sound their own, I think is a really serious thing for us all to think about, whether it's in terms of connecting to community or whether it's in terms of creating our artistic material and linking as traditions in transition, or indeed how we educate. That these 3 areas that were the themes of today link very neatly back into what are we expressing of our collective selves and how do we share it. I love Nikki's point in the previous session about people talking about interdisciplinarity, and she just calls it collaboration. And I think that's a really neat concept, that as we just explore with each other and listen, perhaps that's what I'm hearing you do to each other, with each other. And I mean, I must say, this is when we were conceiving what this might be, we had no concepts of who the people would be or where you might take it. I'm hearing embedded in some of the things you're doing that you still are really well taught by a generation above you who's influencing your modes of thinking, locking things into two boxes, or educators versus students, or you know, so it's actually, how do we sort of interrogate even our new practices for how much inheritance is existing in them on the way. And I think that's a really interesting thing, that one of the most exciting things about the PGVIS conference is that everything will be there for someone to look at next year or 5 years' time or something. And how do we interrogate where we are now, that it becomes more freeing, that we're able to fly more? I think it's a huge question. But the main one, I mean, just as an acknowledgement as opposed to a provocation, just being so conscious that 10 years ago, this conversation couldn't happen in anything like this form because of the technologies, because of the openness of people to express themselves being much more developed, because of the belief that arts matter having become more profound. And I love the inside of what you're sharing is a trust and valuing of tradition. That no one's coming in and saying, throw it all out. There's a real belief, and that maybe there was something that actually came from Shahanam actually back on Monday, which was she found the gamelan after she'd been studying the piano for years. There was a point where she became ready, if you like, to explore a more local musical environment. And even if the cultural systems are drawing people to want pieces of paper or whatever this is, how do we trust over time, if we're influencing quietly, taking, for example, Huiling's last point of play and also of time? How do we have little moments in the margins of what we're sharing that other people think we should, so that it becomes an opportunity for future growth? How do we spark the light? And you folks, you know, if we took sort of, just keep the conversations going, I think. I mean, you know, the school should be an opportunity for experimenting in a safe place.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bernard, for actually starting all these lights for us. And bravo for, like, as the president of SEADOM, he did actually get us together, at least between me and Ling, to be starting with this project 30 Under 30. So we are really eternally grateful to you on that matters. And thank you also for being a part of PGVIM International Symposium for the last 8 years now. So thank you so much for allowing us and always being such a supporting factors to all these things to happen, and even kind of find us sometimes to be with us and reflecting with all these youngsters today. So I think that's is really our honor, and thank you, Ling, and all the panelists today, and all the people who are here today for contributing such a wonderful ideas of what can happen. Sorry. Sorry. Some of the things I have my alarm on.
Anothai and Huiling, congratulations on all you're doing within this area in 1 year during lockdown to have got this far. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
And a big thank you to all our panelists as well. It's been absolutely inspiring to hear from you.
And I think, as Nikki proposed, that we should have a group photo. So if you can just look into the camera and wherever you are, so we're going to give you a quick time to just kind of like turn on the cameras. And then, so here we are, the 30 Under 30, or at least 30 at heart. So please join in together. I'm going to count 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, wonderful. And so thank you again, Professor Bernard Lanskey, Khoo, Ling, all the friends and panelists. Thank you for working so hard to make this happen. I know we have so many meetings, and I'm sure there's going to be more meeting in the future to continue this. So this is now, please don't forget to check out the links and follow us in the website, in the Facebook. And if you have anything you would like to propose, just let us know whenever. And just before that, I would like like to direct you to our next sessions in the afternoon. We'll be hearing more from the people from outside music, but who has a passion in music. We're going to be hearing from people from Google and TikTok, and those are the ones that develop, that has been kind of like developing platform for music to happen. So even though I like the ideas of music exchanging instead of cryptocurrency, but for bananas, that's a great idea, Lauren. So, I mean, keep that going. But at the same time, you're welcome to join us in the afternoon session. We'll try to also post it on Facebook as well, so you can see. And it will be hosted by Jalantan Hanoi Han Dragoon, who is actually, now he's been called Hanoi, but he's from Thailand, but a really good link to Vietnam. Anyhow, he's the developers and researcher at Google and TikTok, and in developing all these kind of platform for music to happen. And he will come with also his colleagues from Sweden, from many different places on earth. So feel free to stay with us. And also in the evening, we'll be hearing more concerts, which will be curated by Dr. Shauna Wee, the good colleagues and the good friends of mine, who will be kind of mix up all this together, traditions in transition or transitions in tradition. So thank you for joining us this morning, and then have a good lunch, and then hopefully to see you back here in the afternoon, or if not, following months, and also definitely for PGIS next year. Thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you.